Hi and welcome to this week's channel. It is the cycle of reincarnation and suffering. This is what I've co-written with my guides. It's called The 3 Awakenings That Save Humanity. It's got some amazing ideas in there. It's about 250 pages. This is available in the paperback version, you can see in my hand, and also it's available in ebook and audiobook. Below this video you'll see there is a link going to this book. Right at the very bottom of that page where the actual order button is, below that is a link saying that if you prefer the digital versions, go here or something like that. I also do private channeling, so if you would like to have a private channeling session with me, then also you can see below this video there is a link going to the inquiry form, which just starts a conversation and then we go from there. It doesn't commit you to anything, it just gets the ball rolling and see if there's a fit. Okay? Right, so the cycle of reincarnation and suffering. Greetings and thank you for the statement. The cycle of reincarnation and suffering. Let us begin by defining the purpose of the One, because it is the One that created the All, and inherent to the All designed the reincarnation process. And as the All is the creation of the One, then suffering also is something which has been intentionally incorporated into the design. It is not an accident, but is instead part of the perfection. So we make this point early on because suffering is not something to be despised. It is an awakening tool. It exists specifically to help you fulfill the purpose of the One, because you are an individuation of the One. The One is experiencing itself through the proxy, which is you. Because although you are an separate individual identity, it is only illusory, because in the ultimate reality you are actually the One, playing with the illusion such that there can be the experience of individualism, of the single identity. And then when this single identity exists, you can have unique experience, which would not be possible if the One was still existing as the single unit without the illusion of separation. So, we are getting ahead of ourselves slightly here. So, first, let's take a closer look at what the One is, what it has done, and what is its purpose. Before the creation of the All, the One existed entirely as a concept. It knew itself to completion conceptually, but it had no experience of itself. It did not know itself experientially. And this is so because when there is only One, then the possibility for experience does not exist. Prior to the creation of the All, the One just was an intangible concept. Yet it yearned to know itself experientially. And for this to be a possibility, it needed to create a matrix where differentiation was part of this matrix. And so, it individuated itself infinitum. into what is known as the all. All space, all spirit, all density, all everything. And through the creation of this matrix, there now were individuations of this one thing that, through an illusory methodology, were bestowed with individual identity that was discretely different from other individuations. And so now there was the possibility for experience. One of these individuations could look at another one of these individuations and say, I am not that. And therefore there is experience. I am bigger than that. I am smaller than that. I am heavier than that. I look different to that. This is self-experience, which has been exploded into possibility through the creation of the all, and this illusion of individuation of the one thing. Because ultimately there is only one thing. So, the purpose of the all is to return to the full realization of what it is. And it is the one. This is the one's purpose. The one wishes to know itself experientially to completion. And the way that this is achieved is when each of these infinite individuations, through a process of incremental realization across the full spectrum of time, finally arrive at a place of full and total realization that this individuation is in fact the one, and it coalesces back into the one. This is the journey of each individual individuation, including you. And when all of these individuations have made this journey back to full realization of self as the one, coalescing back into the one will have fulfilled its purpose for creating the all. And in a sense, the all will conclude. But like the beat of the heart, the cycle of breath, the process will begin again, and the one shall explode itself into infinite individuations, such that this process can continue. So, as the one's purpose is to know itself experientially to completion, then this is also your purpose, because you are the one. You are an individuation of the one. You are the one experiencing itself through the perspective which is you. The one is experiencing itself through the proxy that you know as yourself. And so, in a very real way, you are the one. And therefore, the one's purpose is your purpose, because you are the same being. So, if this identity, this individual perspective that you have been granted, is to be aligned with purpose, then it is to seek greater understanding and self-knowing in the physical experience. So, what is entailed in this journey. This process of realization, which will span all of your incarnations as you continue to reincarnate, is the process of realizing what you are not to further reveal what you actually are. And what you actually are is the One. For you to realize what you are not so that it can be released necessitates that you suffer, because it is the experience of that which you are not, which is suffering. Suffering is endemic to the all. So, before we continue this discussion, let's define what is suffering. In the human experience, suffering is considered to be the unpleasantness of your experience. To be in situations or have conditions within the body that create discomfort to such a degree that it is unpleasant, and this is suffering. However, this is a very narrow view of suffering, and it is the view commonly taken by species which are still early in their development, understanding of their relationship with the all, with the One. In the larger context, everything suffers, because for something to experience itself as separate from the One, as an individual entity that is not coalesced back into the One, is to have an experience that it is not what it truly is. That is suffering. So, until one of these identities coalesces back into full realization of itself as the One, it is in a state of suffering. But what is pertinent to point out here is that even though this state of suffering is inherent to the illusion, and by the illusion we mean the physical experience, this experiential separation from the One, there are degrees of suffering. In the higher density realms, where there has been much incremental marching back to the fully realized state, coalesced back into the One, those are blissful densities, where the moment-to-moment experience is a state fully imbued with love and understanding and wisdom and self-knowledge. So, from the human perspective at this time on your planet, it would appear that that is not suffering at all. That experience is a heavenly experience. And this is true. So, when discussing suffering in the human paradigm, we will make this definition, this defining statement. The way that humanity views suffering is not in this greater context, where you can be in a loving and blissful state. But still, this is a form of suffering because there is the remnants of this illusion of separation from what one truly is, which is the one. So from the human perspective, we would say that suffering ends when this state of separation no longer is a source of discomfort, of unpleasantness. And from this perspective, it gives solace to understand that you can, within this smaller definition, that you can be free of suffering within this lifetime. And the way that you can be free of suffering in this lifetime is to make your transition towards the light end of the spiritual spectrum. Because it is there that you will find the emotional states, the energies, which are love and its derivatives. And when you are entertaining only energies from the light end of the spiritual spectrum, which are love and its derivatives, then clearly you are in a perpetual state of love and its derivatives. Being gratitude, peace, happiness, joy, bliss, love. If you can spend your time in those emotional states, then from this smaller definition of the human perspective, you can be free of suffering in this lifetime. However, this does not mean that you will not have physical hardship. You may still have physical ailment. You may still have financial struggle. You may still have relationship problems. But in an expanded understanding, your emotional state is not tied to your outer physical circumstances. Your emotional state is a choice, and it is always a choice. We accept some physical experience has a propensity for a type of emotional reaction. But even so, the emotional reaction that you have is your choice. So, when you become masterful, it is entirely possible that you can live in conditions which would be considered to be very conducive to suffering, and yet be in a state of total and utter bliss. Fully occupied emotionally by the qualities of the lightness end of the spiritual spectrum. For one to arrive at this state of mastery, where you have developed the capacity to not entertain at all any emotional states from the darkness end of the spiritual spectrum, meaning fear and its derivatives, then it is endemic that you have gone through a process of experiencing the emotional states from the darkness end of the spiritual spectrum, and increasingly made the realizations, had the epiphany, that is not me. And so you let it go. You purge. And more, you gravitate towards the light end of the spiritual spectrum. As you have arisen from the One, then this is your true designation. You are a being of light, because the One is light and you are an individuation of the One. You literally are the One, having an experience of individuality through the illusion. So, when you have a true and clarified experience of self, you only experience the emotional states of the light end of the spiritual spectrum. And as this process of realization, of awakening, is to realize what you are not and then let it go, then this implies that you are not the darkness. And this is true. If you entertain emotional qualities from the darkness end of the spiritual spectrum, such as fear, hate, anger, depression, despondency, and so on, then you are misconceiving of what you are. You are believing you are something that you are not. You are not those qualities. However, it is possible to misconceive that you are. I am angry. I am hateful. I am afraid. But you can never be fear. You can never be anger. You can never be hatred. Because they are emotional qualities, energies from the darkness end of the spiritual spectrum. And you are a being entirely of the light. So it is misconception. This process of making the realization that that is not me, I let it go. That is not me, I let it go. That is not me, I let it go. To further reveal the truth of what you are, which has always been hidden underneath, then this requires much experience. It is not something which can be accomplished in a single lifetime. Over the space of one life, you may occasionally have an experience of incongruency with an action that you have taken, with an emotional quality you have expressed. And through this incongruency, you may have a moment of redefining who you are. And through this process of redefining who you are, I am not somebody who does that. I am not a person who treats another human being in that way. For example, then you release that. Polarize further to the light and step more into the truth of who you are. This is a small step in the journey back to full realization that you are in fact the One, the ultimate being of light. So, when this particular life has concluded, there is still much yet to be understood about self. There is so much more to be realized through your experience of who and what you truly are. So, it necessitates that you are incarnated again so that this cycle can continue. And then in the life that follows the one prior, again you will have these experiences of incongruency, of redefining who you are, purging the darkness, polarizing further to the light. Yet again, taking small steps back to the full realization that you are in fact the one. This is a long journey. It requires very many incarnations. So, for the one to achieve its purpose, then the reincarnation cycle is essential. Because you, the individuation, is not the individuation existing only since birth until death of this flesh suit that you animate at this moment. You are the eternal being that expands many lifetimes. And so, for this eternal being that you are, to come to the full realization through experience that you are in fact the one, then it requires many iterations of this cycle. You must be reincarnated to realize some more, reincarnated to realize some more, reincarnated to realize some more. And as each of these incarnations is you experiencing that which you are not, then this is synonymous with saying it is experiencing suffering. You suffer. And then you incarnate again and you suffer some more. And you suffer and you suffer and you suffer. But even though this concept of suffering seems like it is a curse, why have I been forsaken to live this perpetual journey of suffering? But you are not the avatar. The person you see in the mirror, that is not you. This is the puppet. You are the puppet master animating the puppet. The puppet master is the true designation of your individuation, the higher self. And the higher self is a non-physical being. It is an energy being. Infinite, immortal, and invulnerable. What occurs here cannot touch the true designation of who you are, your individuation. This eternal higher self being which you are cannot be touched by what occurs here. And so that perspective is the true perspective. That is who you really are. And so from that higher self perspective, you are observing this life. And as events occur here which make this temporary avatar suffer, there is no suffering from that higher self perspective. There is only self-understanding. There is only expansion. There is only progress back to the full realization that you are, in fact, the one. So, you do not suffer. From this small definition of the human experience, where suffering is this discomfort, unpleasantness, you do not suffer. Because you are not this. This is just the puppet. You are the higher self, infinite, immortal, invulnerable, energetic. It does not suffer within this small definition of the human experience. So, we hope that you take some solace from that shift in perspective to a more awakened understanding of who and what you truly are, and how that is incorporated into the purpose of the all, of the one, of you, because you are the one. It is your purpose too, to know yourself completely through the vehicle experience until there is total and utter self-realization that you are the one, and you can coalesce back into that identity. So the richness of experience is a wonderful gift for this to occur. If you wish, within the physical avatar, this smaller identity that you are temporarily occupying, for it to have a lesser degree of suffering in this current life cycle, then become a master of understanding your experience. When something occurs in your experience, particularly if you find it to be unpleasant, discomfort, suffering, then look for the energetic root. Because the suffering is drawing your attention to your own manifestation so that you can recalibrate who you are being, your emotional state, such that you no longer manifest these circumstances of suffering. If you can do that, then you can shift your entire experience into a manifested state that is conducive to the light end of the spiritual spectrum, where it's very easy to be grateful, to be peaceful, to be happy, joyful, blissful, loving. However, on the other side of that coin, if you have an experience which, for example, makes you very worrisome, you are worried about your finances, for example, and this state of suffering where you are experiencing emotional states from the darkness end of the spiritual spectrum, if you continue to identify with them, so you continue to hold those emotional states, then you are planting the seed for future experiences which are also conducive to that emotional state. And it must be this way. If you are going to realize that you are the light, and therefore become demonstrative, occupied, aligned with nothing but the light, then you must first let go of your propensity to identify with the non-light, with the darkness. So, if you have an experience which makes you worry, then you are not getting it. You are still choosing an emotional quality from the darkness end of the spiritual spectrum, which isn't you. You are not that. It is a misconception. And so, you need to have the opportunity again to choose differently. And so your worry will manifest more physical circumstances because your physical experience is a physical metaphor of your state of being from the past. Who you are being before has manifested what you are experiencing now. Therefore, if you continue to misconceive of self and entertain these emotional qualities, which are not you, then they will manifest another experience, which will contain within it the same opportunity to self-realize I am not worry. I am not fear. And let it go. And instead, in an awakened way, choose differently. I choose hope. I choose optimism. I choose gratitude. I choose peace. This is the choice you can make regardless of the experience. And so, without the suffering, this opportunity does not exist. The suffering is a gift. It has been given to you such that you can end all suffering for all time, for your individuation, by utilizing it across all incarnations until finally it carries you into the final step of coalescence back into the One. So that the One's purpose for creating you will have been fulfilled. So, this is the driving force of the All. To transcend suffering through increased self-knowing and greater alignment to what you actually are. However, on your planet, the suffering has been extraordinarily high, unprecedented in the context of what we have observed through our experiences of the universe. The Earth-human field was born into a unique state of spiritual dichotomy, which is only possible when a sentient species is birthed into creation without immediate recognition that it is connected to the One, that there is connection to each other, and that you are in fact a being of the light. Without those three understandings, there is a state of spiritual dichotomy where one is unsure they are the darkness or the light. And therefore, to have the understanding of the light, there must be a passing through the gauntlet of darkness. This is a very unique presentation which has only been observed within your solar system. Your planet is now the fourth iteration of this experiment. And the degree which one can suffer within those parameters is extraordinarily high. So it is only the strongest that choose to be incarnated into this Earth-human cycle, because the suffering is so intense. But what has made it even more so, beyond the original expectations of the experiment, is that there are beings which have chosen the philosophical pathway of darkness, that are a species external to your solar system. And they recognized that a species born into a state of spiritual dichotomy is potentially an incredible resource, because as they have chosen the philosophical pathway of darkness, then this essentially says that they have shut off or denied their connection to the One, because the One is the light. And in this connection with the One is an energetic supplement. It is the birthright of existing. You are at all times nourished through your connection to the One. And this connection sustains you to a degree. In the higher densities, as humanity continues to evolve, a point will be reached where no longer will food and liquid need to be consumed to sustain the avatar. It will be sustained entirely through this energetic birthright, this connection to the One. However, imbued in this connection to the One are the qualities of the light, love and its derivatives. However, if you have chosen the philosophical pathway of darkness, then these qualities of love, compassion, sympathy, and so on would be debilitating. If you are taking the philosophical pathway of darkness and your operational strategy is to be selfish, is to be exploitive, is to be manipulative, such that you can get what it is that you desire to have, to achieve, then having empathy and sympathy for your victims, those that you have dominion over and are exploiting in this way, would weaken your capacity. And so it necessitates that if one is to be fully committed to the path, the philosophical path of darkness, that they absolutely deny their connection to the One. Denying this connection is also denying this energetic supplement. And so it must be gathered from somewhere else. This energy, which is denied, is still required. There must still be some energetic input to sustain the avatar. And so, for those that have taken this pathway of darkness, the energy they harvest as a replacement must also be compatible. So if they have taken the pathway of darkness, then it is the energetic qualities from the darkness end of the spiritual spectrum which are relevant to them, which are usable to them. And this is why when they observe the sentient apex species in this solar system and recognized that they were born into a state of spiritual dichotomy, not realizing they are the light, and so having a very large propensity to identify with the dark, to misperceive, misconceive what they are, then if they could get access to this population and through the strategy of manipulation and engineered suffering, make this population identify very strongly with the darkness. I am afraid. I am sad. I am depressed. I am angry. I am hateful. Then this population will emit a very rich, energetic field of darkness, which they can harvest and use as the energetic supplement to replace what they have denied through connection to One. This is what has happened on your planet. And that is why there is such suffering of the highest order on your planet. It is not organic. It is engineered. It is deliberate. The disease, the famines, the war, the conflict, the separation, the division. It is all, in the most part, engineered. It is designed that way. It is engineered suffering with the distinct purpose of keeping you weak, inhibiting your awakening, and farming you as a crop of darkness. And this must continue because you are a being of the light. All organic life is. And as you have greater realization of what you truly are, then you begin to polarize to the light. And when you polarize to the light, you misconceive of self less and less of the darkness, meaning that you emit less and less darkness. And if all of humanity is able to successfully make this shift, this polarization to the lightness end of the spiritual spectrum, then the degree or the amount of darkness which can be harvested by those that have made that philosophical choice will become so diminished it will not be enough to sustain them. And so humanity's awakening must be prevented. Humanity's polarization to the light must be prevented. Humanity's purging of the darkness through realization must be prevented. And so, in a very simplified definition, what is occurring on your planet now is a battle between darkness and light. It has become very polarized, and your species is bifurcating. There are those who are shifting deeper into the darkness, yet the much greater majority is shifting into the light. And what this means is those that have taken the philosophical path of darkness will soon lose all of their power. There are those that are human, that are working cooperatively with the opportunists that came here originally when they recognized this propensity for the human being to identify with the darkness. This alliance is diminishing in power. And eventually, it will reach a state where it has become impotent. And its influence over the greater humanity through the powers of the pillars of control, such as food, finances, weather, medicine, food, media, education, law, all of these will have been diminished to such a point that humanity will be allowed to blossom into the light force that it is. And when this begins to gain momentum, then there will be less and less and less suffering within this small definition from the perspective of the human being. And eventually, when you are incarnated again, you'll be incarnated into a earth human experience which will, from this small definition, be completely devoid of suffering. You will suffer no more. You are approaching the end of this suffrage, this ongoing cycle of suffrage that has been the human experience for so long. It is now the final moments. In your lifetime, it is very possible and also very likely that you will enter into the new human paradigm where suffering, from this small definition, is almost non-existent. And then in future incarnations, suffering will be done only by conscious choice, because one wishes to experience suffering. So there will be no more sense of victim, of why me, but instead it will be in choice for the purpose of greater enlightenment. Let us finish in this way. There is no point to hate your suffering, because to do so just adds another layer of suffering over what you are already enduring. Instead, love your suffering. Have appreciation for your suffering, because it is a gift that you have been given by the One, such that you may use it to have increasing, continuing revelation, epiphany about what you truly are, so that you can continue this march back to the full and total realization that you are the One, and you can coalesce back into this true expanded identity of what you actually are. And then all suffering in the greater context will have been concluded. But it cannot be concluded without this process of self-revelation, which necessitates that you suffer. So, love your suffering. Give thanks for your suffering. Have peace in understanding that your suffering is part of the divine design. You have not been picked on. You have not been forsaken. But instead you have been blessed with this opportunity to be an individuation of the One, such that you can have your own identity and experience. And use your suffering to awaken yourself. When you suffer and you have experiences of emotional discomfort, ask yourself, why is this my experience? Not in a spiteful, condemning way, but in a sincere desire to understand self, to understand your experience. Because your experience is a mirror of you. It is literal feedback data on who you have been being. If you are having an experience which makes you angry, then ask yourself, when was the last time I entertained that emotional state? When was the last time I was angry? Recognize that your choice in the previous experience to be angry planted the seed for your current experience. But this time, utilize the suffering. Instead of choosing anger again, be conscious, be awake. Realize that is not you. You are not anger. You are not emotional states from the negative end of the spiritual spectrum. That is not who you are. You are a being of the light. Love in its derivatives. So choose an emotional state which is congruent with who you truly are. So, the easiest to adopt from the lightness end of the spiritual spectrum is always gratitude. Instead of saying, I'm angry, say, I'm grateful. I am grateful for this experience, for this opportunity to expand, to know thyself, to choose this time in a way which is congruent with who I actually am. I release the anger. I release the need to be angry. That is not who I am. And now you have taken a great leap forward in self-understanding. And this cycle of anger can come to an end. Because if you have an experience which makes you angry, or is conducive to anger, and you choose anger, manifest another experience which is conducive to being angry, and you choose anger, then you have this repeating cycle, this pattern that never seems to end. It will not end until you have the epiphany of self-understanding, realizing that you are not a victim of your circumstances, but you are the manifester of your experiences. You are the one that keeps bringing to yourself that experience. Now I get it. I choose anger no more. I choose gratitude. And then if you choose gratitude, then this has planted the seed for a physical experience which will be conducive to being grateful. Now you are living in a masterful way. Now the feedback data of life, the mirror reflected back to you of your state of being, is going to be conducive to experiencing the emotional qualities from the lightness end of the spiritual spectrum. You will have more and more experiences for which you can be easily grateful. You'll have more and more experiences for which you can easily be happy, joyful, blissful, loving. And as such, that will be the end of your suffering. Within that small definition, within this lifetime, you are not powerless. You are the potential master, unaware of your great gifts and capacities. So, go forth into your experience. And as much as you can, treat each moment at the very baseline emotional state with a sense of gratitude that it has come into your experience. And then from there, march your way up the incremental spectrum of love and watch your life transform. Thank you, and we love you.